there we go. Got recording going. And just so you know, so we are recording the talks. We're recording right now. We are posting the recordings from the talks, and all the recordings from previous talks have already been posted on the Innovate Bio website. You can find them under presentations. We have the talk schedule also at the Innovate Bio website, innovatebio.org. And after this week, we are having a break until April 1st because of various spring breaks. When on April 1st, we're going to have talks from some people who are doing something like almost like setting up core labs, except one is in a high school. They have a DNA sequencing service, and the other is in a community college, and they are manufacturing TOC polymerase. So they've got a sort of almost like a core lab in protein biomanufacturing. So the way this is going to work today is we'll have both of the talks, one after another, and then discussion at the end. And our goals for the series are to showcase the ATE projects, to let people know what's out there, to let people know that it can be a lot of work to write a grant, but it can also be a lot of fun to have one, and you can do some really cool things, and it's a little bit less intimidating. We do have a Slack channel, and I am going to put the link to Slack and chat here. If you'd like to join, you are very welcome. These links do expire, but this one is good for 30 days, so it should have plenty of time. It's still kind of a new experiment, so but we'd love it if you gave it a try. The place where the talk information goes is in the ATE project talks, but actually you can post things pretty much anywhere. We also will have an evaluation at the end of this, and I will post the link to that a little bit later, so we don't lose it in everything else. Okay, so now I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Karen Leung and James Lewis.
Okay, thanks so much, Sandy, for the just for having us and for having these project talks. As we were talking earlier, it's actually been already pretty productive. We had a meeting with somebody this week, actually, to set up internships, possibly, based on the fact that I met somebody through one of these talks. Again, my name's Karen Leung. I'm here with my colleague, James Lewis from City College of San Francisco. You can see our pictures, hopefully on the screen, which is being shared. And our collaborative project brings together a community college biotech program at City College of San Francisco, CCSF, and a research university, and in San Francisco, the second largest employer, the University of California, San Francisco, UCSF. And we've come together to develop a collaborative approach to work-based learning and thinking about how we can make more inclusive workplaces, especially for community college students. So on the image here, you see James and myself, and below our collaborators, Naliti Saul, who's the director of the Office of Career and Professional Development at UCSF, and Sumitra Tatapudi, who's currently our grant assessment lead. So our team, our CCSF-UCSF collaborative team, really believes that an inclusive workplace is an effective workplace that leads to increased engagement and productivity for all. And that's kind of like the basis of why we've moved forward in wanting to build a series of trainings, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And there is more base to that, but for a 20-minute talk, we can point you to other presentations that we've done if you want to hear sort of our whole theory basis. So what I do want to do is give a little bit of background on where we've been together as a collaboration between City College and UCSF, which has been working together for several years. We're actually now on our second ATE project grant, but in our first project grant that ended in 2021, that really led to development of parallel professional development opportunities, trainings for internship mentors and community college students to build skills and foster inclusive workplaces workplaces. This also included publishing our framework for inclusive workplace practices in academic labs, and development of a new CCSF-UCSF Inclusive Mentoring Fellows program that paired together the UCSF researchers who were mentoring our City College students, our City College interns, and had been trained in these practices for inclusive workplace to sort of build a more inclusive workplace environment, and to apply them while doing mentoring with these City College students. And again, because the presentation is fairly short, I'm just going to touch on these, but if at any point that these sound interesting, we'd love to hear from you guys. I'll put our email in the chat at the end. So just to give you a general sense, you might be like, what does that mean? What does it mean to have like inclusive training for a workplace? And so I just wanted to give you the overall layout of sort of our building blocks of our inclusive training that we've developed, really utilizing best practices in organizational management and education pedagogy, and tailoring that to a bioscience research lab environment. And so there's sort of 6 main buckets here of our training: interviewing and selection, assessing work styles and learning styles, expectations, feedback, evaluation and resources, and managing conflict. So for our mentors, the training is actually it's currently an 8-part series, hour and a half each. So it's 12 hours of training, which seems like it's a lot. We've had over 500 UCSF researchers go through this training. And actually the last time we offered it, which has been a while, I'll talk about that in a little bit later. We're gonna be offering it again, really excited, in May. The last time we offered it, we had over 100 attendees, and somewhere in the realm of 60 to 80 people complete all 8 workshops. So these are around mitigating bias and hiring and selection, assessing work and learning styles, learning to set clear expectations, providing regular and actionable feedback, being transparent about rewards and consequences, evaluating progress systematically, providing equitable access to resources and support, and managing conflict. And then on the parallel side for that, for our interns, we provide training that's integrated currently into a course curriculum around utilizing interviews to assess fit. So to determine if a workplace is good for them, assessing workplace environment, and assessing and adjusting to different work styles, identifying and clarifying expectations, obtaining and systematically responding to actionable feedback, and again, identifying and managing conflict. So that's sort of like the overall landscape. I did want to show you, so that you guys could see a couple of examples of what we've done, just to let you know that we do have some of this resourced and housed in another project that we worked on in collaboration actually with the Genentech Foundation, to build a collaborative around work-based learning in biotech, because we realized we had internship programs for a long time. James is an excellent person in particular, who's been around since, I think our internship programs have been around for over 15 years now. And so we had developed a lot of things. We know other people had developed a lot of things, and we wanted to share those things and have sort of build a community to share resources. So I just want to let you know, I can drop this link later, or James, if you have a minute, drop it in the chat. But this tiny URL that goes to our collaborative to strengthen work-based learning in biotech. And right now, sort of these trainings, what we have right now, we don't have a lot available immediately on the website, but what we have is available here. And so I just wanted to show you the website real quick. So this is it's a Google site. So this is the collaborative website, and you'll probably see some familiar faces as you scroll down. And if you go to resources, this is just like kind of us throwing together stuff, so you've got it. There's a variety of different resources that are here. So not just around sort of inclusive practices for workplaces, but also around resume building and interviewing and speed networking. So just so you know, if you're interested in those things, those are there. We have resources and tools for work-based learning mentors, and resources and tools for work-based learning students. And I thought it might be, I'll just give you a little sense of what do you mean? Like, what does it mean to those trainings, like these building blocks? What do you actually do? So for our students, we provide this outline. And then we really work on providing them things like examples of what it would look like to get very clear expectations. So in our published framework in GEMB in 2020, we outlined sort of what we thought would be a really clear set of goals and expectations. So what would it look like to get clear goals and expectations, understand how one would be evaluated, how one was being assessed for their initial knowledge and skills at a particular level, and how are they going to be taught and trained to basically go from whatever their initial base knowledge level was to actually achieving the goal or the expectation that was set for them. And that this was really important to be done for conceptual knowledge, for technical skills, for performance, and for professional behaviors. And so we kind of give them an overview of what a full example of that might look like. And then we actually give them a blank version of this diagram, minus the color parts, and ask them to sit down and think about what of this has been communicated to them? How clearly can they start to write out what do they understand the goals and expectations are of their work-based learning experience, of their internship? Do they know how they're going to be evaluated? Do they know how they're going to be taught and trained? Do they have an understanding of how they're being assessed for what skills and knowledge they already bring to the table? So that really helps them sort of see an example and identify gaps in their understanding. And then I'm going to scroll down really quick and then I'll pop back up. Sometimes things are not exactly in the order I want, even though I created the web page here, so that's my own fault. But then once they've kind of figured out what those gaps are, we give them tools and language to think about how are they going to find that information? How will they go specifically to their mentor, their supervisor, and say, hey, like, they don't have to be like, hey, you didn't tell me these things, but how are they kind of going to strategically find out that information that they don't know so that they have clarity and hopefully they can move forward more effectively. Because of course, what they all want to meet their mentors' expectations. They want to progress as quickly as possible. So really just sort of stepwise, how do they go about doing that? And literally just language examples of how one might have that type of conversation and follow-up conversations to continue doing that. Then additionally, we give them tools such as this one this is the 20 questions to manage your relationship with your research mentor, where they can kind of take a back step and think about not just how are they performing at this particular internship and this work-based learning, but how is their mentor and supervisor performing? And a sense of like, what are they getting? What are they not getting? They're not going to get everything. We never do in any working relationship with anybody, but it can give them a good sense of thinking about, again, where might things be able to be improved, and for them to really get this sense that when something isn't going right, it's not because they're stupid or they aren't cut out for science, but generally there's a knowledge gap somewhere, and the hope here is that the tools will help them identify where that gap is and be able to address it proactively. Okay, so that's some of the resources we have. In our next grant, and so that's what we have been building and we continue to build. We like to build constantly, but in this next grant that we have, we're really focusing on three things. Focusing on industry, so our trainings have been predominantly built obviously between two academic institutions and with UCSF, which is an academic research institution. So we're working on obtaining input, feedback, and perspectives from industry. Not just from industry sort of higher up professionals, but also from community college alumni that are currently working in industry to see what kind of, how we can align and modify our trainings to make them useful in industry and address any additional barriers or different, maybe more prioritized barriers that maybe our students are facing when they're moving into an industry setting versus an academic setting. We're looking to broaden participation, so dissemination, so moving the trainings to an online platform, which is basically kind of already started, but I think a lot of us are thinking about how to provide content in a way that's actually going to be used in an online format besides just long Zoom meetings. So let them really be easily accessed by community college internship mentors and employers outside of UCSF and community college students outside of City College of San Francisco. And last but not at all least, engaging biotech faculty, such as many of yourselves, to provide opportunities for you guys to observe and participate in these trainings, both on the mentor training side and the intern training side, and for us to hopefully obtain input and feedback from you guys so that we make sure that the training is is not only usable for the end user, but is usable also for faculty, and they see it as something that would be valuable to their program, because we realize you're the dissemination pathway to students, just as we are dissemination pathways to our students. So that's what we're up to for the next couple of years. We're getting towards the end of year 1 for this second project. Just because all of you are from community college, I thought the piece that we were, or most of you are probably from community college, I thought you might be interested in what we have already got, some of the data we've already gathered. We're in the midst of sort of needs assessment at the very moment, but one piece we got started off to a little bit earlier was assessing how many work-based learning opportunities are there nationwide? Like in all of our biotech programs, who's doing work-based learning, who's doing internships, who's doing apprenticeships? And so Sandy and Innovate Bio were extraordinarily kind to give us their list of contacts for the programs nationwide. So we sent out 109 emails with a survey to see if we could find out. We were thrilled to get over 40 responses. Felt pretty good about that as a response rate to a survey, especially we know how inundated everybody gets these days. And so we got 40 responses from 39 programs. 34 of these currently have some portion of their students engaged in some type of work-based learning experience. Most of those average to about 176 hours, but anywhere from 40 to 400 hours of whatever that work-based learning experience would be. The majority of these were internships, and of those 34 programs, 85% provided college credit for their internships, 65% provided instructional materials to support students in internships, or whatever their work-based learning was. 32% were bringing cohorts together at some stage during that work-based learning. So either for orientation or sharing experiences together, providing support for one another. And 68% were interested in engaging in sort of additional conversations around work-based learning, which is exciting to us because obviously we're interested in those types of tools and building and disseminating those, as well as seeing what other people have developed. And just in case you want to find out, I can drop it in the chat if people are interested. Sandy had the great idea of making this into a blog post. So it's also on the Innovate Bio website if you're like, wait a second, what were those numbers? So you can check that out too. Okay, so if any of this or all of this sounds of interest to you, please consider helping us improve and disseminate our trainings to really hopefully foster more inclusive workplaces for all of our community college students. You can do this by attending one or more of our workshops, which are all virtual. So from anywhere. Time zones may be a little issue, but other than that, and providing us with your input and feedback. So in that regard, we will still continue to be offering these workshops throughout the remainder of our project grant and beyond. But for right now, the upcoming opportunities, if you're interested, at the end of May, early April, we'll have 2 of our trainings for what we are now calling our workplace navigation workshops for our community college students. And then again, we're going to be offering our full workshop series for inclusive mentor manager workshops in May. Still figuring out times a little bit, but that will be a series of at least 8 workshops. Sometimes other people who maybe have seen our trainings before, we're like innovating constantly. It's like, oh, that's a new problem. That's a new workshop, not a new problem, but maybe this is a new area. So we may have 9, but you can come to any of them. You don't need to come to all of them, but if that's something, we would love to get your input and feedback. We've already gotten amazing feedback from community college faculty who came to some of our workplace navigation workshops last fall, especially in thinking about how we disseminate this and how it's useful for faculty to be able to deliver this type of content, right? What kind of platforms and in what size pieces. And so I think lots of people are thinking about this, but we're actively thinking about how to develop that. So to learn about these trainings, you can send an email to myself or James, and I will drop my email in the chat. I don't have a, so there's a question about like registering. We don't have a registration form specifically. We've been trying to keep sort of a list of faculty that are interested and then send you guys out when we have our dates and stuff settled. And just for final, if you're interested in finding our collaborative website, the URL's up there, and I think James dropped it in chat, and a link to our publication is also there as well, because you kind of want to see our whole theory framework as well. So thanks so much. I'm looking forward to the next presentation.